1. Hellfreezer's note, I found this story in the Neckbeard subreddit, but he does seem like a bit more of a Kevin than a Neckbeard, so I'm including it in the Kevins video. Back when I was in the army, there was a fellow I worked with in my platoon, and for the sake of privacy, I will address him as Armybeard. Even though he didn't have a neckbeard, because the army has grooming standards for soldiers, he definitely embodied the neckbeard spirit. He wasn't blatantly a bad person, he just didn't understand things like social cues, and quite frankly didn't have common sense. Not to be mean, but he simply didn't belong in the military. It's not a job for everyone because it requires things like discipline, physical fitness, and a sense of responsibility, all of which he was lacking. He was overweight, late all the time, and really just didn't care about his job in the military. These things can get someone killed. The weird thing is that even though he didn't like being in the army, the only thing he wore was grunt-style clothing. It was like even though he hated being in the army and was absolutely miserable, he still wanted to show off how he was a service member. My leadership tried for well over a year to set him straight, but despite their efforts, nothing worked. Being patient with him never worked, nitpicking his every move until he got better never worked. It came to the point where a lot of people thought my platoon was bullying him, which was simply not the case. We never singled him out, called him mean names, or were physically violent towards him. He was a walking army post, and it was honestly incredible. There are so many stories about him that I wish I could tell, but not even this post could contain them. I will stick with the most memorable ones. I first met Armybeard about 8 months into my time at my second duty station. He arrived to my unit coming from Korea, and at first he didn't really seem like a bad guy. But it didn't really take long for us to see what kind of a person he truly was. He arrived 2 months to my unit, before we were deploying to Eastern Europe, and we were quite busy packing up all our equipment and prepping our vehicles to be shipped overseas. Oftentimes we worked over the weekends. We were that busy, and because of this we spent a lot of time around Armybeard. Before he really told anything about himself, he told us about his fiancée he met on Tinder 4 months before, who happened to be just an hour away from his home in West Virginia. Country roads. Keep in mind, Armybeard just got back to the States 2 weeks before this and really only has seen her in person once, maybe twice, and yet he had already decided to marry her. Another red flag is that she has 4 kids, each from a different guy, and since soldiers are guaranteed things like a paycheck, free healthcare, free housing, and free food, I would not be surprised if she just wanted to marry him for these reasons. Outside the military, I wouldn't have cared so much, but in the military, you have to make sure your soldiers meet their needs and are not in debt, and are taking care of themselves. If Armybeard decided to claim her children as his own, and she decided to divorce him, he would be spending over half of his monthly income on child support. His fiancée simply has not proven herself to be a loyal person, and we worried about him, but unfortunately it's not legal in the military to force your subordinates to not marry someone. You might think that there is still a chance that she loved Armybeard, but I can assure you she didn't. She avoided nearly every single opportunity to come out and see him, and made no plans to move in with him, even after getting married. When my unit was being deployed to Eastern Europe, she didn't come to the goodbye ceremony, and when we came back, she missed the welcome back celebration because she was at Walmart with her kids shopping for a mattress. When he wanted her to come over for Halloween, she said no because of holiday traffic. The scary thing is that he wouldn't even question these things. He would just go along with all these obvious red flags like there were no issue at all. If Armybeard was the love of her life, then why did she miss all these opportunities to spend time with him? I honestly felt pretty bad for him. Sure, he has caused a lot of embarrassment for my platoon for things I will explain later, but these things didn't warrant someone to take advantage of him and his money. He told pretty much everybody he met about her, but would never pick up on the fact that pretty much nobody cared, and how they thought it was weird how he's marrying a girl he met only once or twice. And sure enough, Army Beard married her the day my unit was being sent overseas, thousands of miles away for 9 months. All my platoon could do then was teach him how to be a husband and a father. This was soon found to be a difficult task. Roughly 3 weeks after my unit arrived in Europe, all of our gear and personal items we didn't bring with us on the plane arrived in shipping containers. While my platoon and I were unpacking our stuff near our bunks, we soon discover Army Beard brought 2 flashlights with him. Oh my. And we were all baffled as to why he brought not only 1 but 2 of them. We were staying in a giant tent, and there was no way he could do his business without getting caught. Yes, we were staying in a tent, but it was more comfortable than it sounds. It was well insulated, and had 2 big generators for AC and heating. It wasn't that bad, to be honest. Anyways, to get back on topic, after we found out he brought 2 flashlights, we of course asked him why he brought them. Sergeant First Class Gonzalez asked, "Why the hell would you bring those? Why do you have 2? You know you can't jerk off in the wide open in the tent, right?" "It's because they were buy one get one free, Sergeant First Class. I actually tried to give one to someone else, but I couldn't find anyone to give it to." Them being buy one get one free still doesn't explain why you brought 2. You could have just brought 1 and be fine. And why would you offer one to someone else? How would they know you didn't use it before?" "I brought them both because they were buy one get one free." "You're clearly not listening to me. You know what? Just go about your business. I can't deal with this BS." Flash forward a couple of months later while we were in Europe. My platoon, specifically Sergeant First Class Gonzalez, Sergeant Brady, and Jonathan, was checking up on him and making sure he was trying to improve himself as a husband and a father. "Army Beard," said Sergeant Brady, "have you done any research on how to be a father and increase your parenting skills?" "No, Sergeant, I haven't had any time." "Don't effing lie to me. What do you mean you haven't had time? All you do all day is sit in your bunk and watch Naruto. You're not a single soldier anymore. You need to take this seriously because you now have 5 people who depend on you. You can't just sit on your butt and expect things to work themselves out. Even though you have a wife to help out, you can't expect her to do all the work." "Yes, Sergeant, but I don't even know where to look." "Army Beard, you cannot be serious right now. You can find all this stuff on the internet. You are 23 years old, and I know you are more than capable of doing simple research." I mean, you found the flashlights. "You also have me, Jonathan, and Sergeant First Class Gonzalez, who have kids of our own. If your wife comes out and tells the Army that you're incapable of being a father and are not providing for them, you can get in serious trouble. If you love your kids, you need to start showing it. Actually, you know what? What are their birthdays?" This one really stumped Army Beard, and it was quite incredible to see. Every day he talked about how much he loved his kids, and how he couldn't wait to see them when he got back, but yet he didn't even know their birthdays. It was honestly really pathetic. You think this would have motivated him to do better, but it really didn't. About a week after this, Army Beard really wanted to show how much of a leader he could be, so he could get promoted. Sergeant First Class Gonzalez, Sergeant Rivers, and Sergeant Brady decided to throw him a bone and give him a chance. To do this, they gave him simple tasks to show off his leadership skills, and would be put in charge of me, Jonathan, and Nathan. Despite being given super easy tasks that even the newest soldier could figure out, he would fail very hard every single time. He would often just ask us for help, and just pretty much left us to figure out everything for him ourselves, and take all the credit. Even when given the task of bringing the platoon's laptop to the unit's IT guys, he failed drastically. He was told that morning to bring the laptops by 1 p.m., but he fell asleep and lost track of time. "Army Beard, why the hell are you sleeping right now?" "My bad, Sergeant, I overslept." "Yeah, doofus, I can see that. Why the hell didn't you bring our laptop to the IT guys? Every time we give you a simple task, you somehow manage to fail." "No excuses, Sergeant." "I'm really not in the mood for that right now, Army Beard. If you can't even do this, then how do we know you have the ability to take care of a family? Stop playing around. We're going to give you one last chance to show your leadership. You're going to give a class on the M249 machine gun to the platoon since you, OP, and Nathan have to qualify with it next week. If you can do that, we will continue to give you opportunities to show your leadership skills." A few days later, he gave his class, and it was honestly quite horrible. He pretty much just copied and pasted things from the weapons training manual into his PowerPoint. He obviously had no clue what he was talking about, and his class was super boring. Half the time, First Lieutenant Warner, the officer in charge of the platoon at the time, was the one teaching it, and was showing the proper firing positions. Flash forward to next week. Our platoon went on a 2-hour drive to the shooting range, where my unit was hosting the M249 range. After we downloaded our weapons and ammo, got everything prepped, the range went live. And it just so happened that I was assigned to be Army Beard's target spotter. When Army Beard was getting his ammo ready to start shooting, he decided to pull the trigger as he was loading the rounds into his weapon, causing it to spray 4 or 5 rounds straight into the ground 2 feet away from my foot. Despite nearly having my foot blown off, I started laughing my butt off. "What the frickin' frick? Why did it start firing like that?" Sergeant Rivers answered, "Army Beard, stop swearing at the gun and get off the range, now!" Army Beard went off to talk with Sergeant Rivers and Sergeant Brady, and while I didn't hear exactly what they said, I do know that they told them he was not allowed to handle any weapon for a very long time, and to stop talking about it with everyone, further embarrassing himself. 2. I've been teaching college courses for many moons now. I've had brilliant students, I've had mediocre students, I've had students who made me fear for the gene pool, including one girl who couldn't accept that whales were real. This Kevin, though, was possibly the dumbest individual I have ever met, the type who wouldn't remember to breathe without external prompting. Shortly after the term started, Kevin approached, before the start of class, to complain that he'd gone to my office and I wasn't there. Of course I wasn't, because he hadn't gone during my office hours, which were posted in the hard copy of the syllabus on the course site, and in a "so large my blind grandmother could read this and she's dead" font on my office door. I reminded him of my office days and hours and where they were posted. He just nodded and said, Okay, in what really did seem like an acknowledgement. The next week he accosted me again, complaining that he'd gone to my office and I wasn't there. I went over my office hours again, now wondering if he was a few squirrels short of a tree. At the end, he nodded sagely, saying, Okay. It was not, in fact, okay. This pattern continued for the entire semester. He'd constantly complain that I wasn't there. He was going to my office so late in the evenings that security was called. He was going to my office on Saturdays and Sundays, and at 5 in the morning. He'd pound on my office door and call my name, leaving only when others in the building would tell him to get out. He'd then accuse me the next day, every attempt at explanation always ending with that infernal, okay, and still no light on upstairs. It took several weeks, but I finally figured out why this was so difficult for him. I then had to explain to a grown man that teachers don't actually live in their offices. That he was genuinely floored by this still keeps me up at night. And it gets worse. One day, I noticed someone stealing the tires from a car in the parking lot. I called security, it was a rural area, and the police were both in a different town and not very responsive. Not knowing that this brilliant Kevin was now part of the security team. He biked over and I pointed him in the thief's direction. They conversed. After a moment, the thief tossed the tires in his truck and drove away, all while the Kevin happily waved him off. Kevin then informed me that it was all fine because the thief had permission. I just blinked at him for a moment, briefly wondered if his parents were cousins, and asked how he knew the thief hadn't been lying. Did he get a name of the car's owner? Did he call that person to verify the story in any way? Did he get ID? Kevin's face fell because of course he hadn't. He then hesitantly asked if he should bike after the thief, who was long gone by then. And I wouldn't have wanted someone this abysmally stupid to go after a criminal anyway. I called the real police, who did precisely nothing, but the thief was caught later, stealing other tires. Kevin was always happy to see me as he biked around in his security uniform. It was nice enough, but I never stopped hoping he wouldn't have children. 3. Some background. My wife and I love cooking. It's one of our favorite hobbies. We cook together at least once a week, and generally we make enough to have leftovers. We have very few microwave meals in the house. Enter Kevin. Kevin is a friend of a friend who I had casually known for about 4 years. He had recently lost his job, couldn't afford his apartment, and needed a place to crash while he got back on his feet. Feeling generous, my wife and I offered our guest room for a few weeks. On his first day with us, my wife and I made a meal together for all of us. Kevin was inspired by our lifestyle and told us, "Oh yeah, I love cooking too. Let me make breakfast for you tomorrow." This was the start of a kitchen catastrophe. Kevin tried to make fried eggs by putting an 8-inch skillet on the highest possible heat. The flames were actively burning the plastic handle. My house smelled like electrical fire for days. Kevin noticed the smell the next day and insisted that my dog had pooped in the house somewhere. Kevin needed to be taught not to keep his fingers in the path of a knife. He somehow consistently kept the flat side of vegetables facing up when chopping. We quickly stopped letting him cut anything. Kevin could not fathom the concept of preheating. Kevin thought the packaged ground beef in my fridge was noodles. Kevin was vehemently against leaving the fridge open for any reason. He said that my milk would go bad because I had the door open for 3 minutes while restocking after a grocery run. While my wife and I were at work, Kevin tried to make grilled chicken using pre-seasoned chicken breasts, and used a YouTube tutorial, +1 for effort. He put the chicken directly on my gas stove because he thought it was the same as a grill. Kevin kept suggesting that our little herb garden would be great for growing pot. I don't know much about marijuana, but I'm pretty sure you can't grow it in a tiny pot like that. I walked Kevin through baking cookies from a pre-made dough. We watched TV while waiting. When the timer went off, I told him to get the cookies out. He came back to the living room and said, "I'll let it cool down." He had tried to get the pan out with his bare hands and had left it in the hot oven to cool down. I told Kevin that microwaving an egg would make it explode. This excited him. While I was at work, he microwaved an egg. It exploded. The whole time he kept pretending like he knew he was doing and was just making sure with his questions. This was over the span of about 5 days. We basically didn't let him in the kitchen after this point. We learned after he'd left our place that he had been in a long-term relationship in which his girlfriend did all the cooking and meal prep. What I don't understand is why he felt he needed to lie. If he had said, "I don't know much about cooking, but it looks like fun and I'd love to join you," we wouldn't have had a problem. Some bonus Kevinisms. Kevin hounded us, asking if he could eat our share of the leftovers. We usually made enough food for 3 people while he was staying with us. This wasn't stupid, just rude. Kevin called all streaming Netflix. Example, Game of Thrones is on Netflix on HBO Max. 4. I lived in one of those student dorm buildings where every dorm is like an identical tiny apartment. I was a teacher, so it was pretty sweet. I could go from my bedroom to my classroom within 10 minutes. There was only one downside, and it was a doozy. I'm sure you can guess. Living in the dorm meant I had to live with freshman students and all their antics. They were harmless, but one Kevin in the building really stood out. This particular Kevin was a large man, and no, I don't mean fat. I mean a real hulk of a man like Schwarzenegger if he was also 9 feet tall. Encountering Kevin was like encountering a wall. If Kevin wanted to do something, Kevin was doing it, and no natural force on earth was powerful enough to stop him. One day while I was at work, Kevin went to the grocery store and obtained an obscene amount of taco supplies. Kevin had never cooked a meal himself before, and later admitted he wasn't sure how much he'd need to make himself a taco dinner, so he simply purchased the depth of an entire grocery cart's worth of ingredients. Upon returning to the dorm, Kevin encountered a problem. He was new to the dorm, and every floor, door, and unit looked the same. Readers, every floor was a different color with different decorations, but I suppose they are similar. Kevin could not remember which floor unit was his, so he tried my door. When my door failed to open, when he used his code, he did not give up and try the next one, no. Instead, he determined the best course of action would be to break the door down. According to my neighbors, Kevin ran down the length of the hall and busted my door open himself like an angry freight train. He then fetched the grocery cart from the hall and proceeded to use my kitchen. You may think this was early in the year and he wasn't used to the building yet, and maybe that's what Kevin believes. But he had lived there for months. Kevin still hadn't learned his floor or unit number. When I got home from a long day of work, I was stunned to discover my door on the ground and a young man in my kitchen, casually cooking an absolutely biblical amount of ground beef. My neighbors, themselves very young, were genuinely stunned and unsure of how to handle the situation, given that he was their own classmate. They explained the situation to me, and I gave Kevin a very stern talk about the consequences of breaking down my door. Kevin welled up and began to cry. He may have been shaped like an adult, but he was very much just a big kid, with a forgetful Kevin brain. So that's how I ended up stepping in and helping a bunch of terrified freshmen how to cook a mean taco filling. Kevin was made to report the broken door to management immediately, but he took responsibility and the worried students helped me to clean up the mess. The building manager had a new door and frame installed the next day. 2 days later, I arrived home to a broken door. Kevin had wanted to make up for the taco nightmare, and he remembered that I had joked about it being unhealthy amounts. The words I had used were an unholy amount of beef. In response, he had gone to the grocery store while I was at work, bought a grocery cart's worth of lettuce heads, and broken into my apartment the same way he had last time, in order to fill my refrigerator with lettuce. He then proceeded to leave a note on the fridge that said, "Thanks, there is heads in the fridge," and left. Kevin's dorm lease was immediately terminated and he was sent back home to live with his parents instead. The neighbors would occasionally knock on my door for the rest of the year whenever they burned or ruined their dinner and ask me for cooking help. And at the end of the year, they bought me a box of taco shells as a joke to thank me for my dinner knowledge. 5. God help you Canadians if you ever call the fire department. Pray it's not Kevin. I recently graduated from a fire academy here in the US. It was a private program intended to boost the ranks of the local fire department by providing a free service education to 11 of the best fitting students. I and 10 other people were selected, and we completed most of our fire, hazmat, and EMT training in our town. However, for the last 2 weeks of fire and hazmat, we had to go to an external program in Texas. That's where I meet Kevin. A shuttle came and picked us up from the hotel we were staying at and delivered us to the campus. We assembled in the mess hall with other students filtering in. We receive a briefing from one of our instructors, and we are then led to a room where we get another briefing but in PowerPoint. Not 5 minutes after the briefing is concluded, Kevin and a few others are immediately asking questions to fellow students about things that have been covered in the briefing, again roughly 5 minutes ago. Now, by no means was I a top student. I had my own problems. But Kevin was on a whole other level. While most of us could understand instructions within the first or second telling, I witnessed this colossal buffoon demonstrate Far Cry 3's definition of insanity on more than one occasion. Prior to the academy, we had all been provided a packing list. Some people forgot things, which was no problem. We were all taken to Walmart to gather small things like shower shoes and razors, stuff like that. Kevin elected to wander around the store. I mention this because while he did get some small things, he forgot a few major ones, for instance a towel. So in a moment of pure unadulterated brilliance, he grabs my towel. This wouldn't have been a problem if he'd asked me, but the way I found out was him walking into the co-ed barracks room wearing nothing but my towel. So I turned to him and asked, "Hey Kevin, whose towel is that?" He looks at me and says, "It's no one's towel." I shake my head and correct him. He gets dressed but doubles down and insists no one was using it. Which reminds me, we had found a towel hanging on the railing in the truck bay. Well, probably wasn't his anyway. In addition, Kevin thought he was God's gift to everyone, especially women. One of the students, a female paramedic from Canada, was Kevin's particular fixation. He followed her around like a lost puppy at every opportunity. This also caused him to believe that he was the apex student, and corrected all of us younger students on what he believed we were doing wrong. I had prior experience in the fire service, thus knew what the hell I was doing. One night near the end of the academy, my shift was in charge of the dishes and the kitchen. We were divided up into 8 engine companies, each consisting of 3 to 4 people. One shift was 2 companies, and this was how chores were divided. My shift was Engine Company 2, me and 3 others, and Engine Company 3, 3 people and our Canadian paramedic. Kevin was part of Engine Company 8, himself and 2 others, and was not supposed to be downstairs at this time, let alone in the kitchen. It was my night to play music, so we were jamming to some old Metallica songs, when out of the blue, Kevin hijacks the speaker. So of course I turn to him and ask, "Yo, what the hell?" And he proceeds to tell me that my music sucks, it doesn't, and that the Canadian paramedic asked him to play his own music, she didn't. He refuses to leave for 20 minutes before getting fed up and storming off to throw a fit elsewhere. We finish the kitchen, I leave and ask to talk to Kevin. He blows off at me first, but finally steps outside. I try to explain to him that he was incredibly rude to me in my shift, but he doubles down again and lectures me for being selfish. Oh well, I tried. Luckily, we graduated with no further issues. I ignored him for 3 days until graduation. So if you live in Canada, pray that Kevin doesn't work for your fire department. Class 342. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and welcome to a Cacophony of Kevins, episode 19. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And please do support me on my Patreon for as little as $1 a month, it really does help. Okay, no more business today, so let's move along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is, what is the most awkward but necessary phone call, if you're willing to share, that you've had to make? I had to make one yesterday. Okay, story time. My mother died at the end of 2008, so a very long time ago now. And shortly after that, it was a couple of months it took me to do it because grief. I had to call up because I took over the house, I took over all the accounts and everything, and have been overseeing all that ever since. So that obviously meant calling up the power company and the gas company for the heating and the hot water and all that sort of thing, which I did. And the power company kind of sort of changed the account over. My name's on the bills and the letters and that when they come in. Well, not really a bill, it's a prepay thing. It's what I took over, it's what I'm used to, so it's actually kind of better, I find. Although sometimes I do think about getting switched over to a bill, but I'm used to the prepay thing. So the gas company, however, who had been informed, didn't. Or at least, I have a recollection that the letters started coming in with my name on it, then it changed back, or something like that happened. But for most of that time, they come in and they say my mother's name on them, my very dead mother. And I see the letter and I think, I'll need to phone them. Then I put the letter to the side. And then life happens and I go on with life things and I forget about it, and then a while later another letter will come in. Just the usual correspondence you get from these people. Then I see it and I'm like, oh, right, I'll need to phone them. That has gone on since 2009, 2010, whenever it became a problem again. And I've recently decided it's time to get smart meters installed. So, because my gas meter was faulty. So they're going to have to install a new meter there anyway, so I figured, okay, I won't argue with them, just install the smart meter, it's fine. I want one anyway. I figure if I'm getting that done, may as well get the electric done round about the same time period. So but before I can do that, I think I really better get this name thing fixed. They have a special line for it. It's Scottish Power is the company I'm with. They have a special bereavement line, and I'm thinking, it's not really that bereaved anymore, but I'll phone them up. And such a lovely, nice woman I spoke to, and she was really, really helpful. And I have to explain, well, she died in 2008, and yeah, I've been meaning to... Anyway, she was no problem at all. Just asked me a few questions. And she's like, okay, I need to ask you some questions. It might be a bit redundant now, since you've already took over the account for such a long time. But we got all that switched over. In fact, during the phone call, because I looked at the online account, it changed from my mother's name to my name, and that was fine. And she said, you mentioned you were going to get a smart meter. I said, yeah, but I could do that online. She said, oh, I could do it here for you, which was nice, because I thought they just dealt with switching and changing and cancelling accounts for bereavement issues. But I guess they've told all their personnel push the smart meters, because there is a government mandate, I believe, to get people switched over to them. There's many conspiratorial reasons as to why people think that is, but ultimately it's an energy efficiency goal. If you're more aware of what you're using, you're gonna be able to manage it better. Because some people say my bills went up after. They didn't really. You were just more aware of your consumption, as I think what happened in most cases. So that is where we are now. That very lovely lady was able to change that for me, in spite of the awkwardness of the phone call after all this time. That situation should be sorted now, so all those letters should come in with my name on them, as they were meant to all along. Because, like I say, it's not that I didn't phone them, I did, but I guess it wasn't changed properly. And smart meters will be coming in the next few weeks, which is good, because the gas one is broken and I cannot top it up. Let me know what you think in a comment below. There was a question in there somewhere. Oh yeah, weirdest, most awkward phone calls you've had to make. And before we go, let's move on to the answer of the day from a previous video. And this one comes from a Cacophony of Kevins 18, and it was about, have you ever partaken of something and just not been sure if you liked it or not? Let's see. Today's answer comes from Julie Reap. I've started watching all of Stephanie Sue's videos from her different channels, Rotten Mango, Baking a Murder, Baking a Mystery, which are true crime and popular books and movies and TV series, respectively. Both of those I love. Her other channel is Mukbang, which I don't like, but find myself watching anyway because I love the stories that go along with it. Thank you very much for your answer, Julie Reap. And with that, I'm going to head off for now, so until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.